Okay. Um, this is about Stuart Hameroff's new interview with another researcher about the orchestrated reduction quantum consciousness research. And Stuart is giving the update on the latest research. So he said that Anirban Bandyopadhyay is about to have a paper published on how he's proven that the EEG signals of the brain are actually quantum undertones or subharmonics of the microtubule ultrasound frequency, the megahertz, and that the megahertz is this non-local resonance from the tubulin via the terahertz and the tryptophan molecules in the tubulin, creating the pi resonance with the 1/2 spin electrons. And the one thing that Stuart pointed out was that Roger Penrose had discovered that his equation for the quantum collapse of non-locality creating consciousness was also discovered by another scientist, apparently at the same time as Roger, and apparently with no knowledge of Roger Penrose's research, which I find kind of hard to believe. But it was the same. He derived the same mathematical equation, and I can't quite remember the equation. It's the denominator is the mass of space-time separation, something like that, and the top is the frequency times the Planck's constant. I think. So at any rate, the other scientist, I think he's in Russia, and he had different conclusions about the equation that he derived, and he argued that there should be some kind of radiation emitting from this process. And essentially what Penrose is arguing, that you have to build up enough nuclei in the brain of the neurons. So it's the proton and the neutron together. And as you build up the tubulin, that are the A lattice tubulin, when you get enough of them, then they create this non-local collapse of due to the gravity building up as the mass of the separation of it makes the non-locality unstable, and so it collapses into mass as matter. And so the Stuart Hameroff says that this other researcher, and Penrose had named his equation, he included the other researcher's name in his equation as to give him, the other researcher, credit also. But the Penrose basically has a different analysis, even though they use the same equation. And so this other researcher just published an experiment where they tried to find radiation, and they could not find radiation. And then Hameroff says that they created some kind of straw man argument to try to disprove the Penrose's analysis. And so Hameroff says that Penrose is working on a reply, that will. And the key argument of the Penrose's argument is that you're dealing with a reverse time or retrocausality when the collapse happens. And this might be, hard for people to believe, but actually, Olivier Costa de Beauregard was making the same argument that he was the protege of Louis de Broglie, and so the father, Louis de Broglie, is one of the founder of quantum physics, basically was critiquing relativity. And so I've said all this before, of course, but the key point that Hameroff is pointing out is that Penrose's argument is the reason there is no radiation is because when you have the retrocausal collapse, it's basically destroying what would otherwise be like a multiverse of other space-times. And so what could have been radiation no longer exists because it got destroyed from the future due to the gravitational potential. So this is going to be a really fascinating paper once Penrose publishes his reply to Hameroff, or to this other researcher. I think his name is Leitz or something like that, or Leitz. And of course, I know from my meditation training that precognition is very much real. And the wild thing about precognitive visions is they're more lucid and more real than being awake. And there's a good book on this called Transcendental Dreaming by another Minnesota. She has a PhD in psychology, and she's a professional psychologist, which is sort of like it's better than a counselor, I guess, but I don't know what. I mean, she used to compete in Tai Chi, and then she studied shamanic meditation in the Andes, and her name is Dr. Christina Donnell. And so she talks about her precognitive dreams, and the book's called Transcendent Dreaming. If I already said that, but so now what I really want to say, what all this was working up to, is when Stuart Hameroff, he says, well, that's why there's no radiation. And all of a sudden, I remembered this puzzle that's been like stuck in my head since I read about it. Qigong master Yan Xin, he did a tour of the United States, and this was in the mid-90s, I think it was. And I actually met somebody who went to see Qigong Master Yan Xin and experienced his energy in New York City, I think it was. And the fellow I met was 85 years old at the time. His name was John Beauchamp or Beauchamp or something. I don't know the English pronunciation of his last name, but he had been an arts professor at University of Minnesota in the 1950s. And he was into primitivist art. And at any rate, even though he was 85, I had a lot more in common with him. And we had common friends even, and because I had other friends who were older, and he got introduced into the beatnik scene in before the hippies, and he still carried around like this little beaded bag, like a shoulder bag kind of thing. Like he looked like a hippie, even though he was 85, but he was really like a beatnik, so he was even older than the hippies. And at any rate, he and we had a great time. I actually did energy healing on him also, and he lived. He had his own house, and his dad had left him stocks from saving up from being a dentist. And I read that he passed on just a few years ago. I think he was like 97 or something, 98. He lived for a male, that's very good aged, So at any rate, he told me how he saw Yan Shin. Okay, so now to get to the meat of the matter, they did these studies on Yan Shin when he would do his qi emitting lectures, and one of the studies documented gamma radiation as a byproduct of the healing that he did. Now, when I say byproduct, the paradox is that his qi energy itself did not emit gamma radiation, and yet there was this sort of like byproduct. There was an increased background level of gamma radiation in the room. And so I was puzzled, what's going on here? And we find similar results from the research of Fabio Cardone, who uses a piezo, what does he call some kind of ultrasound transducer? Oh, sonotrode. He calls it the sonotrode that he invented. I think it's 3 watts. It's only 3 watts, I think. Or no, it's 15 watts, maybe, at any rate, of ultrasound. And he claims to achieve basically nuclear reactions, but it's sonofusion. So there's no radiation once again. And he's able to transform and transmute matter. And he argues it's the same exact thing as what Penrose argues, that there's a space-time collapse from non-locality, what he calls the shadow of light, based on De Broglie's analysis, Louis De Broglie. And so this is the key factor for like a qigong master, is that they're emitting very high frequency energy. And Hameroff even talks about how when the Tibetan monks were brought over by the Dalai Lama to be tested at my alma mater, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, by a neuroscientist there, and he found that their resting EEG was a much higher frequency. It was like 120 hertz or something crazy like that, and instead of the normal gamma what they call gamma EEG is, I think it's like 40 hertz. But if you understand, as Anirban Bandiopade is publishing, that the EEG is just a undertone resonance from the higher frequency of the megahertz and also all the way up to terahertz, which is the blue light. But that blue light itself is a quantum undertone from the negative frequency and reverse time noncommutativity of the tubulin and microtubule. And that was the other thing, is that the researcher tried to use the phrase random, and Stuart Hameroff, he had to emphasize that Roger Penrose does not think it's random. He says it's seemingly random or apparently random. And if you study, again, the Alain, the Fields Mental mathematician, who's like the father of non-commutative geometry, he points out it's the discrete rational numbers of the inner cross product of the matrices that are not random. And the reason they appear to be random to scientists is they can only be measured after the fact, unless you're using the Yakir Aronoff's entangled photon experiments with the weak measurements with Heisenberg's mathematics. Then you can capture this what he calls negaparticles, which are literally this reverse time mass before it collapses into matter. So it's like the relativistic quantum non-local field is actually documented in real time as that's guiding the matter. And because the weak measurements are able to manipulate just one variable without any quantum uncertainty. But it's still non-commutative because the time frequency uncertainty arises due to the non-commutativity. So there's still a paradox going on, because you have to assume, for the weak measurements, you have to assume there's a contained infinity as a spatial symmetry. And this has been critiqued by Dr. Ruth E. Kastner, because the truth of reality is like an open infinity based on negative entropy. And this is what Roger Penrose believes also with the quantum biology, is that you have a eternal proto-consciousness, and that the microtubules are then orchestrating the reduction due to the inherent metamaterial superradiance. And Hameroff, he mentioned the superradiance also. He said they're doing experiments to prove that this superradiance is occurring in the microtubules and tubulin. What that means is, again, that the non-locality is a superluminal acoustic phonon between the masses of the tubulin and the dipole molecules inside the tubulin, which is mainly the serotonin, the tryptophan molecules that make up the serotonin. And that's what resonates at the blue light. And that's what we see in meditation also, the blue light. You can see this from solar gazing. If you do the solar gazing, when you close your eyes, you'll see a beautiful blue light. At least that's what I see. I hope others see that also. But you're actually seeing the quantum undertone of the virtual photons that power the sun as the reverse time energy. And this is what Penrose emphasized, that was originally from Schrodinger. In Schrodinger, his book, What is Life, in 1946, is arguing that the origin of life is the same as the origin of the quantum entanglement that creates solar fusion. It's due to this reverse time negative entropy gravitational potential that it then collapses in to cause the solar fusion. And I don't understand I don't remember all the details. I mean, I've read about it, but even like photosynthesis works based on quantum non-locality, and that's how the photon is converted to an electron, electrochemical energy. They argue that this is how the sense of smell works, and also bird migration. Those are the standard quantum biology topics. And if you read the Life on the Edge book, which is the Royal Society Science Award winning book in 2016, they have a chapter at the end on Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose, but this was before Anirban Bandyopadhyay had corroborated their claim of the microtubule quantum coherence, which was corroborated based at the ultrasound frequency, creating a 3,000 times increase in the AC conductance signal. And Stuart Hameroff has a new paper published where he's giving an overview of their whole orchestrated reduction model, and he's comparing humans with other life forms, also using the microtubules. And the other thing he mentions is the anesthetic research has also corroborated their model, and that's what that was his field. His specialty was being what do you call it, a anesthetic doctor or something. I had one of my friends growing up, his dad, that was his career, was putting people under, as they say. I don't know the anesthesia. I can't remember the career name. They make a lot of money, but it's obviously a lot of, it's a stressful job, I would assume. I mean, but so that's pretty much all I have to say. And so basically Roger Penrose has solved this conundrum that I suppose I kind of figured it out, but if you figure like a qigong master, because you're using meditation, it's not an external measurement, and science has proven we can listen up to 10 times faster than Fourier uncertainty or time frequency uncertainty as a linear operator. So we're able to continually resonate as a quantum Zeno effect, and thereby not create the destructive radiation, and yet maintain a precognitive resonance with the non-locality from the future, and have precognitive visions. And also, as Olivier Costa de Beauregard emphasizes, all the other spiritual and paranormal phenomenon are thereby derivative of the precognitive process of this reverse time and negative frequency resonance that his mentor, Nobel physicist Louis de Broglie first documented with his law of phase harmony that is not taught in physics schools, physics classes to this day. But Louis de Broglie said that was his greatest discovery, was the law of phase harmony. And I've talked about that several, pretty much all the time, so I'm not going to repeat them. It's a very simple concept, but it's also explained in music theory, and it's non-commutative, so that's how I first discovered this logic, was by studying music theory in high school. That's when I discovered that concept. So I look forward to Sir Roger Penrose's reply being published. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I've been listening to his debates on his cyclic cosmology, conformal cyclic cosmology or something, that his model, which I think it ties right in because it's based on the negative entropy of the source of reality. What he calls it God, but it's based on noncommutativity, as he admits. So I'm just going to leave it right there, and thanks for your time.